Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Monday, January the 11th, 2016, and I have the great honor and distinct pleasure of welcoming back one of my favorite people to speak with, Mr. Jeff Nielson from Bullion Bulls Canada, and he also writes for Sprott Money News. Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing great, and it's always nice to get an invitation to come back.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. We've got a lot to cover, so let's just get started.
Sounds great.
I've learned that Mr. Nielson is just a handful of credits away from being an actual economist, which I did not know, and I think that that's a very pertinent piece of information.
And let me add that, because I'm a few credits away from my actual economics degree, nobody can accuse me of being an economist.
That's right. You're the anti-economist.
I'm not a member of that club.
You are the anti-economist. India has been making a lot of noise recently with their gold grab, and they made an attempt to fool the people, the general populace of India, to turn in their gold for pieces of paper, and that went over like a lead balloon. So with the failed attempt there, I think they wound up with just under a pound of gold, or right at a pound of gold, out of 20,000 tons estimated, held by the general populace of India. And then so they turned their eye towards the temples in their most recent gold grab. And it appears that is failing miserably as well. And Jeff, you've been staying on top of this whole situation, and why don't you bring us up to speed with what's happening over there?
Well, the gold deposit scheme, quote unquote, in other words, India's gold stealing scam, officially got launched around the beginning of, middle of November. And basically what happened at that time was we got an update after the first couple of weeks, and as you noted, there had been practically no gold deposited by Indians. And of course, there's a very good reason why this scam basically fell completely flat. And what it was that after a lot of dithering and obfuscating, the conspirators, which is basically India's government and the bankers, finally came out and released some details on how this scam was going to work. And the key line was in an article from Reuters, and it read that basically the deposited gold will be, quote unquote, auctioned off from time to time. And of course, this made the whole scam totally explicit. Indians will be depositing their gold, supposedly being held for safekeeping by their trusted government. They'll get paid paper interest on that gold. While the gold is supposedly being held on deposit, the conspirators are going to be selling it off. And then, of course, Indians will end up with paper interest, but no gold. And so once it became explicit to that degree, then any sort of greed impulse that might have been obscuring the view of Indians on this scam just disappeared. And of course, they had no interest at all in being fleeced in this matter. So right after that, then India's government released what it called some new incentives for the scam to supposedly entice its population into getting fleeced in this manner. And part of the incentives was that it announced that it wouldn't tax the interest that the chumps who participated in this scam were being paid. And of course, that was just hilarious because, as I just finished mentioning, what's happening is Indians are getting their gold stolen and ending up with a little bit of paper interest. And then we have the government saying, oh, yes, we're going to be really nice and we're not going to tax that paper interest. Well, and they thought that would be enough to get them to line up to be fleeced. And then, of course, the next 2 weeks rolled around and they ended up with another pound of gold out of the entire population. And it was at that point in time that India's government decided to send in the bankers. And that was exactly what it said in the Reuters article. They're going to send in the bankers to, quote unquote, nudge India's temples to quote unquote hand over their treasures. And at that point, I just couldn't help but laugh because, this is Reuters that's writing this word for word, and they can't even talk about this scam without making it sound like a stick up.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, this is the whole point. These people are so corrupt and so evil that they can't even clearly see their own actions for what they are, and they genuinely seem to be mystified that Indians are not lining up to have their gold stolen in this manner.
Yes, with a smile. So now they're gonna send in the real criminals who can persuade them, wink, wink, and to turn over their gold. I don't think it's going to work. I think they're going to tell them to run them off their property. You need to back on out before I unleash Shiva on you or something. I mean, it's
of course
ridiculous.
they were actually successful, and they did quote unquote persuade one of the temples that had previously just announced that it was skeptical and not really interested in participating. It convinced one of these temples one way or another to hand over 40 kilograms of gold. So that's basically 98% of the gold that they've harvested so far in this scam. So the question then becomes, is there significant opportunities in terms of nudging these temples to get them to hand over more of their gold? And in fact, I just got some feedback from a reader from India, and his perspective on how things are in that nation is that the temples are considered to be quite corrupt themselves, and the temple trusts that oversee this gold are regarded with suspicion by a lot of Indians. So there could in fact be some potential for squeezing more gold out of these temples. But of course, the thing then becomes, if they don't get any gold at all from the people, and they do these grabs with the temples where they're getting moderate amounts of gold, but certainly not enough to really justify the whole scam. If anything, I would say that would doom the overall scheme even more, because then it would just be starkly illustrated to Indians that the people, of course, won't touch this, and the corrupt temples will, and that would become a stigma attached to this whole scam, which would likely prevent it from being successful at all with the people. But like I said, that the temples themselves are somewhat of a question mark.
Well, and that raises a lot of questions. I mean, as far as if you've got a citizen on the ground in India saying, well, the temples are looked at with, they're not held in the highest of regard as far as the people that are overseeing these gold trusts, then maybe they're sending in the bankers to work with their buddies at the temples, and it's more of more collusion than anything, than persuasion.
Well, let me qualify this. When I mentioned this comment I'd received from a reader about perceived corruption with India's temples, I don't think that there's generally any sort of working relationship between the temples and the banking crime syndicate, because the thing is I've been following the attempts by the one bank to liberate the gold from India for several years now, and the temples have long been a target of the bankers. So it's not like this was just the first attempt and they immediately got some gold and they can probably walk up to another temple and get some more tomorrow. They've been trying to squeeze gold out of the temples for many years and have failed.
Well, hopefully they will continue to fail.
Yeah. So this is the thing. There's definitely an extra element of uncertainty here because of the fact that the temples are considered to be less than pristine in terms of their integrity, but at the same time, like I said, we have a long history of the temple still not being reluctant to turn over their gold to these even more corrupt institutions.
Anybody that doesn't know and understand that the banking cabals are a criminal, corrupt organization is either blind or they have no clue. And I can't believe for a minute that the temples in India, who, like you've said, they've been dealing with these criminals for some time, which I would have to. I can see where that would be because they do have massive amounts of gold, where these bankers would have been approaching them for a number of years. I would think that they can see right through them, and as I said a minute ago, we can only hope that the temples and the people that are in charge of these trusts, get them out, root them out, and just tell them to go, move along. You're not getting anything, But
Well,
the fact that they've gotten 40 kilos, that's a lot. That's a lot of gold.
well, it's less than 100 pounds. So I mean, it's obviously compared to the next to nothing they've gotten out of the people, it's a significant amount. But it's still just a drop in the bucket in terms of the overall amount of gold within India. And so in percentage terms, that even including the 40 kilograms they got, I believe that the total amount of their haul to date is something like 0.0008%.
Yes.
So this is the whole point. It's, obviously, if you or I had 40 kilograms of gold, that would be a lot of gold. But, out of the 20,000 tons in India, it's still basically just a drop in the bucket. So, it's, in some respects, things are very clear in that it's highly unlikely they're ever going to be able to squeeze any significant amount of gold out of the people here. But like I said, the temples themselves remain something of a question mark. And it just, I guess, kind of a trade-off between whether you think their corruptibility is going to win out or their lust for gold is going to win out, and they're not going to allow themselves to be swindled any further.
Well, I would think that I think that their love for gold is going to win out because that relationship has been there for a very, very long time. But and I would think also, Jeff, that not only the people, just the man on the street in India, along with the directors or the people that are overseeing these trusts within the temples, I would think that they know what you and I know, which is that there is a supply crunch, that the mining industry is being gutted right now, and that 5 years from now there may not be any fresh new supply coming online. And so I would hope that some of the folks know this, and like I said, if you and I know it, and that's their job, and the general population of India has this, just this love of gold, and I would think that they have a pretty good idea of that as well. I mean, wouldn't you?
I think you could be presuming too much here.
Okay.
One thing we have to keep focused on is that India has no domestic gold mining industry.
No, I understand that.
For centuries, it's been simply importing gold, and so. But this is the whole point. Without any gold mining industry of its own, it's very unlikely they would have any understanding of the fundamentals of the mining industry.
But you wouldn't need to know the fundamentals. You would just need to know that the price of gold has been down. Therefore, something is wrong within the system.
Well, but the
somebody's going to be talking about that.
But the point is that the only way to recognize that a price is illegitimate is if you're aware of supply and demand fundamentals.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
The point there, of course, is that where do people in India go to get their information on supply demand fundamentals in the gold market? Well, they go to the World Gold Council. So, I mean, this is the whole point. Okay. This is why it's so important for the bankers to control the message, so that with respect to anyone who is not intently focused upon a particular subject matter and thus able to see through the lies, then they control the message. They create the paradigm. So, of course, in the world of the mainstream media, there's plenty of gold around. There's plenty of silver around. And this is certainly what all that people are hearing in India.
Okay.
And so I would suspect that there's only a very microscopic portion of that population that has any real grasp of supply-demand fundamentals. And for the rest of the people, gold might as well be something that grows on trees, because it doesn't grow in India. It just shows up in boats. So this is the thing: I don't think that there is a lot of uh, good good a very good grasp of the whole supply demand fundamental picture in India. And of course, the other side is that they have such a huge domestic gold market that for the Indian population, the supply demand fundamentals for the gold market are their own gold market. So when they get reports from the media that Indian demand has risen a bit or slipped a bit, that's what they play off of in terms of their own purchasing habits and whether they're willing to pay more or less for an ounce of gold. And very little heed is paid to the actual physical supply demand fundamentals of the market itself.
Okay. Well, I could see that. I can certainly see that. But you and I, on the other hand, we pay pretty close attention to what's going on out there. And you just or Sprott Money just released one of your latest articles called "Precious Metals: Buy Now or Roll the Dice," in which this article discusses, the reasons for that you just laid out, as far as the mining fundamentals, the market fundamentals of supply and demand, and should I jump in now or should I wait? And from my perspective, any day that I'm alive is a good day to buy gold and silver. What do you think?
Well, as we know, the next crash is coming up really soon.
Very
And
soon.
of course, that means another period of panic where people aren't thinking clearly. But beyond that, I also wanted to make sure I got a reminder out to people so that they could remember what happened in the last crash. And what happened during the last crash was that, not surprisingly, gold prices and silver prices were whacked extremely severely. And we had the most ridiculous fantasy prices for gold and silver at the peak of that trough in any time over the last 15 years, going back to when silver was below $5 an ounce and gold was below $300 an ounce. But of course, the flip side to that scenario of insanely low prices was lack of availability, particularly with respect to silver. And what happened very quickly after the crash of '08 exploded upon us, and of course was deliberately detonated by the bankers, is that most retail silver bullion products disappeared. And all that was available through the majority of the trough in the market was the largest silver bars. I believe that it was mostly the 100-ounce bars that were still available. And there simply aren't a lot of small investors that were ready and willing to purchase silver, in the form of 100-ounce bars. So this is the thing. The wonderful paper price that existed for silver during that trough was essentially an illusion, because only the largest investors still had access to silver at that point in time, and thus there was no silver to be had at that official price. And that's one aspect people need to keep focused upon as we head towards another crisis period, is that while the price itself may become extremely favorable, even more favorable than the crazy prices we have today, it doesn't do us any good if there's no metal available. And that was one point I wanted to get across to our audiences. Mm-hmm. And the other side of this is that when the market becomes even more stressed from prices being pushed lower, there's another phenomenon we have to watch out for, and it's what I've described in the past as quote-unquote decoupling. And the point there is that at some point, the bankers' artificial prices become so torturous on the market, and particularly with respect to the retail supply chain, that we'll simply get a moment in time where the either the retail element of the supply chain or even the wholesale element says, no, I'm not going to sell any more of my silver at these prices.
Right.
And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to decide on my own what I think I should be selling the silver for, and I'm going to call that the silver price. And of course, we're already getting this to a certain extent in the silver market right now. If people go around looking for silver bullion products at the retail level, most likely they're going to be paying somewhere around a 25% premium, if not more, to purchase their silver. And of course, when I wrote the article, I put quotation marks around the word premium at that point, because a premium for purchase of a hard commodity like gold or silver is supposed to reflect two things. It's supposed to reflect the transaction costs of handling a physical commodity, which are certainly greater than zero, and of course, it also has to provide a profit margin for the dealer himself.
Right.
So that is what the premium is supposed to represent. And traditionally, because gold and silver are such liquid markets, this premium has always been a single-digit figure and generally a low single-digit figure. So, seeing a 6% premium or an 8% premium or maybe even a 10% premium on silver, there's nothing particularly outrageous about that, particularly when we know the market's somewhat tight. But seeing a 25% premium on silver, it starts to become a question of semantics. It's no longer really a premium at all, and what it is dealers setting their own price. I'm not going to sell my silver at $14 an ounce US. I'm going to sell it at $18 an ounce US,
or more.
Plus whatever markup I put on top of that.
Exactly.
And so, this is basically no longer a matter of dealers adding premiums, but dealers creating their own prices, and that's what decoupling is all about. Is we have a phony paper market, we have the real world where there's a real physical market, and the participants in the physical market finally say, no, I won't do my transactions at this phony price anymore. I'm going to do my transactions at least someplace closer to a real world price. And of course, once decoupling starts, it can quickly become a phenomenon which the banksters have no means of interrupting, because they have very little direct control over the physical market.
So if you don't have it, you need to get it, because as we have been saying for months and months and months, the mining industry is in trouble. You can look around and see that the supplies, you can go to APMEX or your favorite online dealer, SD Bullion or whoever, and they still have product. But just like you were saying, Jeff, let there be just the very slightest of change that is sustained, and watch how things change overnight. I mean, it's going to evaporate. And I was listening to an interview with Keith Neumeyer that Sean did with over at SGT Report, and Keith Neumeyer was saying that the retail, the little guys, you or myself, Sean, whoever, just the individuals here in the States, that they're all gone, but yet the products are still leaving the shelf, which leads him to believe that these are the big institutional buyers, they're the banking bullion banks, and that they're the really big, the big money is coming in, and that's what is driving the retail market at this point. What do you think about that? Well, that concludes part one of this interview with Jeff Nielson. If you'll click the screen where it says click here, then it'll take you straight to part two, and we certainly appreciate everybody being here.